Welcome to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, your front row seat to the boldest ideas and smartest strategies in the marketing game. Your host is Reed Hansen, Chief Growth Officer at MarketSurge.
Hello and welcome back to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge. Today we're diving into one of my favorite intersections where discipline meets disruption. My guest, Steven Werley, went from serving as an Army Ranger to becoming the founder of Closable.ai, a company that's transforming how sales teams turn data into dollars. Steven doesn't just talk about AI in theory, he's on the ground helping sales-led organizations build pipelines that actually convert, uncover high-revenue behaviors in their teams, and automate the kind of follow-up that used to take an army of SDRs. His work has already reached more than 6,500 business owners, and today he's here to share the playbook for how AI isn't replacing salespeople, it's supercharging them. So buckle up, because we're about to learn how a ranger's discipline and an innovator's mind are reshaping the future of sales. Well, welcome, Steven. I'm glad to have you on.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to be here, Reed.
Well, first of all, I think your journey has been super fascinating. You've served in the military as an Army Ranger, and now you're an AI founder. Can you talk a little bit about that transition? What the differences in culture between military and corporate, or military and tech corporate? What's that been like?
Yeah. It's interesting. And there's some steps in between there too, right? So the military, I think anyone, and it's funny, I was talking about this with somebody yesterday, when you're in the military and then you go and get a job, or you're working with, civilians, quote unquote, like non-military people, it's a complete change in discipline, right? So that is an eye-opening experience, because you're used to, okay, somebody says something and you're supposed to do it, you get it done, or everything changes. And then when you shift from that to out, all of a sudden, that's not exactly how the world works, and that's not how people tend to respond to things. They might say yes, okay, or nod their head, but things change. So when I got out, I actually joined a company as an employee, my degree in computer science. And on the first team call that happened there, some guy got fired. And I later learned that he got fired on that call for like the third time. And they were just bickering back and forth, like him and the owner. It was a small, like 10-person company. But it was one of those things that I was just like, holy smoke, like this was like drastically different than what I was used to experiencing. Because if this guy had acted out in that way, I'm not saying like firing wasn't necessarily the bad option. Was it the right option to do on that call? Probably not. But also, had this happened in the military, this guy just would have been like feet up doing push-ups nonstop. So it's just different. Like he never would have got to that point, because he would have known the consequences beforehand. With that said, I started a marketing agency shortly after that, because I realized that I just wasn't ready to really code again. That just wasn't the right place for me. And then I shifted into sales, and now sales and AI. So it's been a very, steady transition. But I think overall, it comes into seeing the differences in leadership between companies and how that transcends down to the team. So I see it a lot within the sales teams and how they react to the top, how they talk about the executive level team, how they respond to their managers, things of that nature, more so than anything else at this point. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I've never served in the military, and thank you for your service, first of all. But the perception I've always had is that, kind of like you described, it's like very, very clear action and outcome in terms of like discipline. And I've spent my life in corporate where, a lot of personnel decisions are made by gossip or like impression, or just not like so direct. And sometimes I would be kind of envious. It'd be like, well, rather than have to be embarrassed in front of a group in a conference room during a presentation, like my pipeline's not full enough or something, I would have loved to just do 100 push-ups and just call it, do better next time, but who knows, like maybe not.
Yeah. I think it's scarier though when when it's somebody else, and this is what happens a lot, like when it's somebody else that messes up and then you're the one doing push-ups and you never know, like, all right, what's John gonna do today, right? Like, what is he gonna do? What is he gonna forget? Like, did he study this stuff? Does he know the numbers going into the meeting? Like, that's where you're just like, oh my gosh, like, and this guy's just watching you do push-ups. Then that's how a lot of the punishment happened.
Yeah.
You mess up,
Yeah.
and then other people get punished for it. So then you had to have that bad feeling about watching other people struggle for your mishap. But yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So now, in addition to the military, you've highlighted a couple things which I think are pretty unique. I have a sales background, and I was always fascinated by the engineers that were building the products I was selling. Just what they did was mysterious to me and super impressive. But you've combined that. You have a computer science background and a sales background. Now, obviously, like, you've kind of combined that in Closable.ai. But maybe talk a little bit about how those two fields and maybe what is the thought behind the Closable AI services and products.
Yeah, I tend to think my background is pretty unique in terms of a lot of folks. I think that, most people that go through a computer science track tend to stay somewhat in that track. Even if they veer off a little bit, their mind's still like very, very technical. And I've also learned that I definitely benefit from a bit of the strategy aspect of things too, and seeing, big picture and not just like being in a code and, doing those things. So, I, I think my idea was I never actually really loved implementing and doing tons of really in-depth implementing, though it's a, kind of a superpower in a way. So it's one of those superpowers that I would try to hide, and I would try to hide that in my marketing, background. I would try to do more strategy consulting and not necessarily get into all the build outs and everything, even though I'm very efficient at it. And then when it came to the sales teams, I learned pretty quickly. I love doing sales, like sales and having conversations and doing these conversations too on podcasts. They're very fun for me to do. I love talking to people. That's probably where I'm almost a little bit different in terms of the, computer science track right there, the general aspect or view on it. But when it comes to, Closable AI specifically, it was, how can I take the strategy of everything I've done in terms of building the sales teams, managing the sales teams, how we make decisions and coach and do all those things, and then take AI and bleed that into it, and then be able to give that away in a way that's relatively productized, or some form of implementation that isn't super stressful for a business or takes a lot of adoption coaching for the teams or anything like that. And it really started while I was running the sales agency, because I was overwhelmed in the feedback loop. And for anyone that is wondering what I mean by that, it's, I have a team of salespeople. They need calls reviewed. They need feedback on what's happening in the sales process. And it's really hard when you're managing teams to be able to get all that out in an efficient manner. And then AI was coming up, and then I dedicated some time to really learning AI. And AI started to assist with all of that. Not saying it was 100% as good as me at that time, but and it can't necessarily hear the aspects of how a conversation sounds, more basing on a transcript and things like that. But it's good enough to cover my missed tracks, and it's better at analyzing large data sets than I am, right? So, and in general, better than, most people, unless you really take a lot of time, right, to sit down and do it. And then it's like, okay, what's the benefit? And then what's that causing you to miss out on? So all in all, Closable AI, a way to bring in the strategy aspect of what's happening in the sales process, get good coaching out of it, good data for a business owner or the team leads, marketing leads to see, hey, like, this is where things are getting stuck in the sales process. Maybe they need more information here that we need to build collateral for. And then in the sales process, like, hey, maybe we need better touch points here, and then moving through the rest of it. So just combining a lot of natural flows and using AI to enable that. I'm a big AI enabler versus AI replacer. There's certain aspects where AI can replace in certain aspects, but I'm a big fan of human in the loop, and having those humans be able to be and operate at a higher level because they have the technology at their disposal.
Okay. Well, okay. So a few questions from based on that. Now, at Closable, like I think you're doing some really important work, and and so from based on my experience with sales teams, you'll have some sales organizations that they kind of operate by feel, by gut. Like they like the alpha players or the
Yes.
more charismatic salespeople, and they tend to succeed regardless of results or effort. And and so that's a culture that's not using data, period. And then
Yes.
there's other cultures that use kind of traditional metrics like number of calls, number of meetings, and like total revenue closed. I also feel like those might not be complete. But of those two groups, where do you find more traction with Closable, and what do you think is? I mean, do you have different approaches for those two kinds of sales cultures?
Um, yeah, in a way, I honestly, the way that I position it is that one, the A culture is it's a tough culture to operate in general. I find that it's a very volatile culture. That's where you get the higher turnover rates because uh, generally, and I don't mean this in a 100% of the time, but generally those folks are more self-serving, and they're the ones with the higher turnover rates. So while they're there, they can give a lift. It's a metaphor that just popped into my head. If you think about, if you remember the days where Terrell Owens was playing, a lot of times he would play on a team and give them a lift, but then when he would go down and leave the team would be left in like strands, and it would completely tear down the culture, and people would pick sides, and players would need to be traded away in order to rebuild the culture. Coaches would need to be fired, right? So that's a very volatile place to be, ultimately. And I pitch this more as a way to say, hey, let's build a team around culture, because we don't necessarily need the people who are going to be the best when they come in if they don't meet that culture. Now, there are A players who are great culture people. They exist. But a lot of them are more on the self-serving, hey, like, I'm going to go for the thing that's going to get me the best result. And no shame in that either, right? That's just a personal preference. But if we can get the people that are dedicated to the company and might be more of that B level player, and I know you kind of separated it into two groups, but if they're more of that B level player, and we can build a way for them to use the things and be dedicated to using the things because they see a pathway to greatness and they're more about growth versus just end result, that's the person that we can bring into a team and make it more sustainable as well.
Okay, no, fantastic. So, and when we're talking about leadership of sales teams too, I haven't encountered many sales leaders that are very, tech competent, maybe competent, but like barely, or,
Agreed.
and it's really not it's not like a key driver of success in years past. I think going forward, it probably will be. But they're overwhelmed by like concepts like AI or automation. What do you think, how do you introduce these AI tools and automation inside sales teams that aren't traditionally, maximizing the use of their tech platforms?
Yeah. Here's what I'll say in general. I see the same thing. I had an issue with this early on. The issue was just getting people to use the things, but that's also in terms of getting a sales team member to update the CRM can be a dreadfully painful process sometimes.
Sure.
which is tough. I find that which is surprising because I find that now there's a like old sales and then there's young sales, and I still find that those young sales they're almost just as bad at the tech side, if not worse than the others, because the people who have been around sales for a long time, they know what it takes in order to get the deals across the table and keep track of their pipeline. And they know with experience that the money's in the pipeline. I think a lot of the younger guys haven't figured that out yet, so they're just tech averse in general. What I try to do is figure out what a sales team's process is before moving in. And generally, most of them are pretty similar in general in terms of the way that they attack things or what they're looking for. And creating customized dashboards for sales team members is a huge benefit in what I see in terms of adoption. So if they like seeing their deals populate in a certain way, let's have the deals populate in that way where they can visualize it. And then when they click in, if it, gives them suggestions for follow-up emails and things of that nature, then it's right there for them, right? They can just pull from it, and it's where they're tracking everything anyways. So and we can integrate that with their existing CRM if that's the case, or if their CRM allows for, certain things to come into it and we can just work within that, then we'll do that. But I find customizing it to the salespeople with it's usually not a massive customization aspect, but it's just how can they visualize it in the way that they like to do it. I find that sometimes sales team members pull all their deals out of a CRM and put in a Google Sheet, and they track them that way. It's like, what a nightmare. And then their CRM's never updated. Well, what if we can take that list format and give them that in a dashboard, but then also have it synced to the CRM, so that way they don't need to, focus on doing it in two places. And then also just implement the AI tools into that. So then it's already there. They're looking at it. They're looking at the suggestions when they click into the deal. They're making notes, or AI is helping them make notes, and they can adjust it. So
that's fantastic. Well, to pull the thread on AI, a big question that is affecting a lot of businesses is the role of AI in the sales process. Today there are technologies that are, that actually automate,
yes,
a lot of the emails and texts, but then, we're also seeing some intelligent voice AI agents,
Yep.
even like avatars or customized videos that are sent out dynamically. Where do you stand on, just at a high level, where should teams be embracing AI? And I think you mentioned you're not trying to replace but augment. Where do you see the place for the human touch or the human sales efforts?
As much as possible
Okay.
is my opinion. I feel that these tools are shiny and some of them perform well when you look at it at a high level. Like if you're like, oh, I listened to an AI call, that sounds pretty good. It handled it pretty well. It has the knowledge. When you look at it from the other side of it, the prospect side, that's where I think we're not quite ready for that. I think we will be more ready for it, and I'm glad that the technology is advancing in the background. But I take a more conservative approach there. While I think there's a lot of benefit in using AI setters in certain aspects, and if no one's available to answer the phone, it's better that an AI answers the phone than nobody. That's where I see the best use right now. But if a human can make that initial connection, I believe that's going to flow better at that stage. AI, I believe, does a better job in terms of helping with the data of understanding it, looking at the pipeline stages, seeing where deals get stalled, help with giving feedback from the calls, how we can customize emails based on the offer and how that conversation went for the follow-up aspect. So it takes a little less of that work away from the closer and admin time so they can get back on the phones. That's where I find that most salespeople want to operate anyways, right? They want to be on the front lines closing the deals. And I don't think we should look at AI as the solution right now to be the deal closer. In some cases, I can see some early level AI setting capabilities, and definitely a lot where you have a 24/7 receptionist, 365 days a year. Like that's sexy, right? Like that's one of
Yeah.
those things that's great. But if you have a whole sales team already, would I dump the setters for the AI? I probably wouldn't. I don't think that would yield better results down the line. I think you would have a drop off from that point to the next step, and then you would have a lot less at bats in actually closing folks.
Well, I think that quote is going to make it to the highlight reel because I share your opinion, and you're certified expert in this field, and though those technologies are out there, I just don't think that you can replace a human salesperson. Like I feel like to complete a transaction, a large purchase, like you need to feel a little bit heard. And I just don't think that AI voice bots are really capable of that. It's just I don't know if our brains will get there, but I don't know because it's two parts. It's
If
like the
AI
AI,
becomes sentient and
yeah,
we're like hiring, maybe like I don't know, but it like we're not there, right? Everything's based
right,
on predictive text. That's what AI is. That's what an LLM is. It's all predictive text. So
yeah, yeah. Well, absolutely. So Stephen, just closing thoughts. Do in the next 3 and 5 years, what role do you see AI playing in sales management and overall growth strategy? Do you think it will have an increased role, or do you think it will? Do you think it'll just be kind of where we're at today? What do you see, or are there any specifics that you see down the pipe?
yeah, specifically in sales, that's an interesting way to think about it. And it's funny because I don't always think about it directly in sales. I generally think about like, hey, what's AI going to do in 3 to 5 years in general?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's hard to guess. I think definitely an increased role. I think that part's obvious.
Mm-hmm.
What does that increased role look like? I'm not sure. I think that within the next couple years, AI is going to do a lot of, I think it's automatically going to seamlessly hit pretty much all of our sales process and give feedback and move things along in a way that we haven't really been able to be seen before. And theoretically, I guess even today, you could have it acting pretty well. It's just that you're limited on the API models versus what's available within, just logging into chatgpt.com or the other ones. So the API models aren't necessarily the best yet, but they're going to continue to increase. And also, nothing's the best right now, right? Like everything in the next 2 to 3 years is going to be crazy. I think, Zuck is taking a very hard stance on super intelligence and the AI glasses and wearing those, and that's going to like give us all this stuff that we're I think they believe in 2 years they're going to have self-training models within the next couple years. That's pretty bullish, I think, but I also wouldn't be surprised at all. I think the general public would think that's pretty bullish, where we're achieving self-training AI. So what does that mean in terms of the sales process? I honestly haven't thought through that, but I believe that salespeople are going to have real-time insights into these conversations. I mean, if it is something like AI glasses, you could be having these things just pop up in front of you, like, "Hey, like, oh, you said this, like, you should bring this up, right?" Like you're
Yeah,
missing the
yeah,
math here or something like that,
right.
right? And it's just like right in front of you. It's like, how much can you listen and then respond at the same time? But and I think that really is like an evolution of wearing the AI glasses in a different country where it's translating for you, in terms
Yeah.
of somebody speaking to you and then it's translating and doing that.
Hmm.
So, I think we're going to get just much more integrated. I think things, even like I'm working on at Closable, it's just going to be more of a seamless, quicker integration into all the tools. But the thing with a lot of AI tools that I see, that, I just like to to kind of say like the weariness about is that I find that a lot of people that are creating certain AI tools or custom GPTs to do things or whatever it is tend to be just built to do something quick, but not necessarily with the person who has the domain knowledge, right? That's where I see the opportunity for a lot of folks who have domain knowledge to use AI, because AI is something that you can learn fairly efficiently and fairly quickly. And being able to do things like what I'm doing at Closable.ai with other industries, other domains, other things is taking the knowledge that you have. Like for me, it's in sales, applying that using AI and help augment humans with it, and not just these crappy like prompts like you're a sales trainer, give feedback on this call. Like it should be like a very well trained version. And those are the things that I'm creating, right? That I just don't see a lot of these tools and softwares doing well that are coming out. And I actually thought about building a SaaS around it, but I think SaaS is going to die pretty quickly, because I think, we can already tell AI to create software within, a sentence, and it's not perfect right now, but I think within the next like year to 2 years, that vibe coding and stuff is going to be very efficient and very quick. And I just don't see the need to create a system around that, because I think it's like, why put the money into that right now when I can still implement pretty quickly with what I'm doing? So I just think a better integration level of AI is going to be in things. It's going to be easier to do it. But then also the ones that are going to win are the ones that are actually built with good domain knowledge and not just generic prompts. Because you can think you're getting good results with AI. And that's the thing with AI that you have to watch out for. You can think you're getting good results, and it tends to, back scratch you versus, give you more blunt feedback a lot of times. But I think you got to find ways to make it work in the right ways. And that's the hardest thing to decipher, I think, in these days right now with AI. Being in what I'll call the Wild West days of AI, I think eventually it'll dial in a little bit. But right now it's just AI.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a lot of great wisdom there, right? No, I appreciate it. So Steven, obviously Closable.ai is your website where people can reach out to you. Is there any other platforms you'd like to promote, or any?
LinkedIn's a great place to connect with me. I would say, I'm sure it's on the title of the episode or in the notes, but Steven with a V. So if you look for me, Steven Werley, Werley, easy place to connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to chat with anybody and talk about AI in whatever way. So it's just a fun thing to talk about right now, and continue to learn and grow and meet and figure out what other people are doing with it too. So,
well, awesome. I mean, hopefully somebody listening there has a great, podcast needs a great podcast guest, because Steven, you've given me so many great quotes, and we're gonna have some great highlights. So,
I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and I look forward to future conversations. Hopefully we can stay in touch and maybe collaborate future.
Absolutely.
Want to stay ahead of what's actually working in marketing right now? Head over to MarketSurge.io and see how we're helping businesses grow smarter, faster, and longer.